So I've submitted 2 letters to City Council, 2 requests. The first is a zoning amendment, which would put restrictions on small box retail stores, which are dollar stores, thrift stores, etc. And it would also put restrictions on games of skill businesses. If you're not familiar with games of skill businesses, they present themselves as gambling establishments. You play at a video console, and it has all the feeling of gambling, and you win gift cards, vouchers, gas cards, etc. So we've requested a zoning amendment to put limitations on both those business types. We've been receiving a lot of interest and phone calls about establishing more small box retail stores and more games of skill businesses. I was concerned that too many would have a negative effect on the city of Findlay. I looked at
what about the dollar store? What do other communities do, and how many dollar stores do we have in town?
We currently have eight dollar stores in the city of Findlay, and then there's one just outside the city of Findlay. Other communities also have put a ratio. The most common I found is 1 for every 10,000 people. And then also adding a clause that you can't put another dollar store within a mile of an existing dollar store. This change of the code would not affect the existing dollar stores. They could continue to operate.
Just give me like an idea. I-1 areas in town, like what is that area?
Light industrial.
But like give.
The north side of town. Let's see, Tall Timbers.
Oh, that's what my head went to. So Tall Timbers.
So,
or north
I mean,
of.
To be honest, so for example, adult businesses, they are permitted in the city of Findlay, but you make it to discourage them. You allow them in places where they probably wouldn't want to go. There aren't strip malls in the I-1 district. And so essentially if a game of skill wanted to locate, they most likely would have to build something. And that would have, it's a conditional use. It would be reviewed by planning commission and could be fully vetted out. The nature of what I've seen of these businesses is they're here for less than a year and then they go away. And then another one pops up somewhere else. It's kind of like whack-a-mole a little bit. So,
an ordinance authorizing the establishment of a 6-month moratorium on the establishment of any new small box retail stores and skill-based amusement businesses in order for the city of Findlay, Ohio to consider incorporating the proposed additions into the current zoning code as outlined below before enacting them as part of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Warnicki?
Well, I can see the point of doing that, and I guess if anybody was totally offended by that and made their decisions known after 6 months, this would be over, for one thing. And 2, I did think it was interesting in the paper today, because I didn't see that in the other stuff that I had read, that it looks like there's a history of that possibly taking out a grocery store that has more nutritious food, I think was the way that worded it, instead of cheap packaged stuff that, anyway, I would be for it.
Mr. Palmer?
I think the owners and those in the industries that are being that are under this proposed moratorium should have the opportunity to speak to us and make their argument as to why we should not do that.
First of all, 6 months when you're looking to establish a business, you probably have already been in contact with the city and began the process. So I don't think we're really going to be limiting someone in the near future that would be interested in beginning, to establish a facility like this, especially the box stores. The skills games, as Matt has mentioned, they are typically places that pop up, have some issues with law enforcement, and then are gone again. Obviously, we're familiar with one, at least on Sandusky Street, that has had a number of problems and is no longer located there. I know we've had some other facilities over by kind of Menards, over by Rancho Fiesta. So they are typically places that that our law enforcement are well aware of and deal with frequently. However, I know that there's also a population that is interested in them. So I think that because it is something that we already have in our community and we're not necessarily negatively impacting individuals to be able to access them, we're just giving ourselves opportunity to determine if it's really what we want in our community moving forward. So I am supportive of the moratorium and the further discussing the language change.
Mr. Baumann?
I mean, to me, this just makes sense. I mean, if I heard Matt correctly, we have 4 more dollar stores than what our population would allow.
The question was, this moratorium for, is it 6 months?
Correct.
6 weeks, 6 months, that's what I thought. Once that comes off and we hear the legislation officially, would not the proprietors of these have the ability to come in and talk about it then?
So we're moving forward with the proposed changes are moving forward now.
All right.
So, so when I got up and spoke, I view there's 2 options that are reasonable. One is passing it tonight, but that, I know that's a little abrupt. And what I had proposed was letting Planning Commission weigh in on it a week from this Thursday, and Planning and Zoning weigh in on it, and then on the 18th, the next meeting, it satisfies that there's a little period of time passed, and then I would request at that meeting to waive the readings.
Heard.
And
Just
I'm comfortable with both, but I know
for
some people.
clarification, you're talking about the 6-month moratorium, not
Correct.
the actual ordinance.
The actual zoning amendment will go through its normal 3 readings and all that process. But they're both moving forward at the same time. So it won't be the moratorium and then moving forward with the amendment. Both started tonight, the legislation.
I don't mind the moratorium, but I guess, as was mentioned earlier, I think maybe we ought to give those who operate these types of things an opportunity to speak their mind.
On the zoning amendment?
Yeah.
Yes, and that's the zoning amendment. I personally would never request a zoning amendment, a permanent change to the code to be expedited. We need the public to weigh in, and that's the process. It'll be going through the regular process.
Okay.
Ms. Frischi?
So, stay put, Matt. So, I guess I'm easier on board with regards to the skill-based businesses to do something immediately, where I think the small box retailers, I think we need to give more consideration and hear them. And then, and I guess how do you feel about that? I mean, why do you have them together? Could we have put these separate? So you have the small box definition, and then you have the skilled gaming thing. Can we separate, or it has to be together?
I presented it together. I don't know the logistics of separating it right now.
Well, I just meant for you, like, it would be under the same definition when you're done, when we take it through committee and we make the changes, it'll be one, because you had the definitions together. I'm trying to understand why they're together. Just because that's what you did, or because they categorize together?
So for each category, we're adding a definition to the zoning code. So I tried to show the proposed changes, and then one of the changes is adding the definition of each. The moratorium,
I'm looking at the moratorium is what I'm more
Okay.
focused on.
So-
I'm looking at, to do something immediate, I agree that, like, we need to give these small box businesses more time to weigh in, and have that discussion, because I don't think it's right to jump on it. Plus, I love my Dollar Tree, and I hope it reopens on Tiffin Avenue, but that's okay. But the amusement gambling situation, I see that as an issue in our community that brings things that our community does not want. So I I would be in favor of passing that part tonight for the skilled amusement, remove the small box, but then,
Just, I guess, a point of clarification, I'm not viewing the moratorium as a change to the zoning code.
no, but it's putting everything on hold, right?
Correct.
So putting people on hold for the next 6 months without vetting it on small box, especially when we're trying to determine a Hallmark store versus a dollar store, I think that needs more vetting. And I guess I'm looking for council to give me some input on the.
I thought from what I read, I guess I don't understand why, well, anyway. I thought you said this isn't having any impact on what's here, correct? You just don't want to let anything new come in the next 6 months, right?
Correct.
So I guess I don't really understand who needs to give a lot of comments to this, but that's where I was confused. I mean, the people that are here, I don't think needed a comment, but.
Mr. Baumann?
Yeah, I mean, for me, same. They'll already get that input with the second ordinance. So in other words, there's really no need to separate it or do anything. It's a point in time so we can begin the discussion.
I would suggest that we do is that council go ahead and approve the moratorium for 6 months tonight for both. And then when we get the legislation come through, that we delay that and potentially give it a couple more, another meeting or so, just to give it a little bit more time. That's the way I would probably go with it, which means tonight we suspend and go, and then we'll deal with the actual legislation when it comes to us, when it finally gets passed with the two committees, if it does.
I think it's too much government. Seems like somebody doesn't like dollar stores in Findlay. Are we gonna do this to hamburger shops? Are we gonna do this to the tobacco sales? Are we gonna do this to liquor? Look at the people that sell cigarettes. They're within a mile of each other. I think if you have a product ID or service, you ought to use the free enterprise system and be able to open a business.
Any other questions or comments?
I would make the motion to suspend the rules and the ordinance number 2022-109 be given its second and third readings.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Nay.
Mr. Palmer?
Nay.
Mr. Slough?
Nay.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wopser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Nay.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
The motion to suspend is not adopted.
5.
Okay,
Against.
next.
First reading for ordinance